Hesse came back in 1911 from India, essentially saying this was a humbling experience. He looked at the social and political situation there, and he also realized his own limitations.
Yes.
But realizing his own limitations, how far he can get into this world, didn't make him stop explore it or then throw it out. But it's just, you have to stand on two legs. And you have to be at home in your tradition while an integration, a meeting, and a communion between whatever it is at a certain time, exotic or dismissed or devalued. And I think it's a very similar situation today with Islam and the Western world and the Christian world, where Islam is, what is emphasized there? They're living our shadow.
Yes.
There's a tremendous amount of devotion and
courage and focus and deep faith, all the things that we lack so terrifyingly.
Yeah. So to be at home, really, in the world that you come from, to open to another world without abandonment or condemning your own world,
right.
that's where the meeting has happened. And actually, I want to give you one more quote here about the poet. Hesse says, a poet is an explorer, a visionary, imagining what convention censors. Because convention always tells you, if you believe these things that these other people from this other terrible religion tell you, you will be a traitor.
Yes.
And we will persecute you, or we will actually expel you.
Yes.
You're not part of us anymore. But anyway, Hesse says, a poet is a messenger between the familiar and the unknown, as if he were at home in both places.
Lovely, lovely. So
it is
beautiful.
that being at home in both places.
And slowly growing a universal soul.
You don't have to throw out where you came from,
right.
because there are beautiful saints in Christianity. We're full of mystics, and I wouldn't even want to start out mentioning them. Maybe Meister Eckhart, Hildegard von Bingen, and it's a long list.
Yes, and great philosophers of wisdom like Montaigne and like Schopenhauer. Could you read that beautiful poem that Hesse wrote to the ancient Buddha, the wonderful poem that he describes like I don't think any other Western poet has ever described, the true depth of Eastern wisdom and what it can offer us. It's on page
78, yeah, in the book?
No, it's on page 85.
On page 85, all right. Yes. Good. An ancient Buddha decaying in a Japanese forest ravine. Long rain and cold nights of frost unveil your shape, soft and worn away. Covered with moss, your face still shines serene. Your half-closed eyes still reveal your calm focus on eternity. Your tranquil yes to the changing over into the formless void of the unlimited. The slowly withering features of your face still speak of your noble mission. But dampness, mud, and soil are finishing the fate of thorn, completing its purpose. Tomorrow you will be root and rustling leaf. Tomorrow you will turn into water mirroring clear sky. You will curl as ivy, grow as fern and algae, become symbol of all transformations, and show the eternal oneness behind all change.
The eternal oneness behind all change. That is the great gift of the East to us.
Yeah.
Because you can only make effective and truthful and transforming change, which we need to do desperately on every level, if you also paradoxically know and feel and are grounded in the oneness behind all change.
And for me, this poem is, every person is that decaying statue in the forest, in nature.
Yes.
And so when you meditate And for example, you look actually how time works on you. At one point, every person has the opportunity to reach a point of stillness inside where the war against time, which rules our society today, becomes ridiculous.
Yes.
And really is palpable, is as an illusion.
And the war against death, you remember the great poem, Ich bin ein Freund und komme nicht zu strafen. When death says, I'm your friend, I don't come to punish.
Mm-hmm.
Death and time are actually friends because they're co-creators of a masterpiece.
Those assure progressions.
Yes.
And not necessarily our ideas of progress.
No.
Because that's basically what we traded in the West.
Yes.
Instead of going with the progressions as they happen, as they inform us, and
yes.
as they outform us.
Well, this is what is so important about Hesse's work and why it's so essential for us now, because I think there's a second wave of profound hunger for the soul beginning. We've had the first wave in the 60s, and that played itself out in the 80s and 90s in the whole New Age movement. But I think many of us are now feeling that that initial stage, that first wave, was very naive, was not disciplined enough, not focused enough, didn't go deep enough, and didn't have deep enough passions for the transformation of society. It was in fact a kind of higher narcissism, another narcissism, not a healing of narcissism. And one of the things that strikes me so much about Hesse's poetry, especially his spiritual poetry, is how deeply grounded and sober and realistic it is. Realistic about the suffering that the path entails, realistic about the failures that you will have and continue to have on the path, and realistic too about the loneliness that the path can lead to, the sense of bewilderment and estrangement, and realistic too about the responsibilities that evolution places upon the seeker, not just of his own or her own joy and bliss, but of actually putting that joy and bliss into action. So one of the ways in which Hesse guides us, I think, in this second wave, just as he came in the first wave to open up the wonders of Buddhism and of Hinduism and of this potential union, now when we're maturer and really hungry for an authentic spirituality, which we desperately need to be able to deal with the chaotic crisis that is exploding everywhere around us, Hesse's poetry is coming to us, in which you can truly hear this note of acute, humane, sober, no-nonsense realism, which is, I think, the key to the transformations ahead. How do you feel this? How do you relate to this peculiar note in Hesse and its guidance to our contemporary?
Well, the rebellion against the norm was a necessity.
In the 60s.
In the 60s, yes. You know, the Cold War, we can eliminate this other evil system. That kind of thinking, people had to replace it with something, because it was
yes.
too a worldview that was just not satisfying, and it was
it had corrupt and destructive and creating war and devastating the environment.
And there was the fear of the whole world being blown up by
yes.
nuclear bombs.
Yes.
So I feel that for Hesse at the time, said first you need to strengthen the individual.
Yes.
Without, of course, falling into the trap of hedonistic narcissism.
Right. Which
and a lot of people, they read Hesse because in a way they thought, oh, you know, now free love and the freedom of everything, right. I have a lust for enlightenment,
right.
and I can get it now, or at
right.
least at the end of the weekend workshop. And it's going to be free from then on, the free
right.
ride, the freedom, the
right.
easy rider kind of thing,
right.
you know. And then that promise, of course, turned out that actually in order to reach a mature spirituality, you pay a price.
Yes.
And in pretty much every novel that Hesse ever wrote, he shows you
clear.
that it's not going to be free.
No.
And it's stages which will be, at many stages, very difficult.
And
very
painful.
difficult and painful, and
Right.
you want to escape
Right.
into another illusion of the free ride,
Right.
which is now what we have plenty of, which is really all the addictions.
Yes.
Alcohol will make it go away, whatever, some drug will go away, whether it's legal or illegal.
Right.
I will not have to go through the growing pains
Right.
towards the mature personality. And so in a way I think Hesse possibly played less of a role in the 80s and the 90s and in the first decade of this 21st century, because it was a time when at least advertisement and political ideologies and technology promised that you won't have to pay a price.
Well,
it
not
will
just
be
that.
easy.
It was a time when New Age spirituality became ascendant, and New Age spirituality is just a masterpiece of tragic narcissism, saying you can have it all, you can be it all, you can be rich, thin, fabulous, and enlightened very, very quickly, just simply by deciding to be so.
But Hesse, as we said earlier, basically said, your branches will be hacked 100 times.
Yes.
But then you will grow new leaves
Yes.
on these branches.
And this is the ancient wisdom both of West and East.
Yes.
It's the wisdom of Rumi, and it's the wisdom of Lao Tzu, and it's the wisdom of Goethe, and it's the wisdom of life.
And that takes a lifetime.
Yeah.